All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Denise Pritchard, and I'm the Marketing Content Manager here at R365, and I'm really excited to be here with you today. We'll start off with a few housekeeping items, then get right into the presentation, followed by Q&A. Please submit questions by clicking on the question mark in the toolbar at any time. And just a friendly reminder that a link to the webinar recording will be sent to you in the next few days. And if you need any help at any time, just contact us at marketing@restaurant365.com. All right, I am thrilled to introduce our speakers for today. We have Rich Sweeney, who's a lead solutions engineer here at Restaurant 365. Chef Rich joined the R365 team after 15 years of being focused on the kitchen, being an owner, consultant, executive chef, and director of culinary development. His experience in restaurant operations ranges from his own restaurant in San Diego, a regional multi-unit concept, and up to nationally recognized brands. Chef Rich grew up in the restaurant industry, and after putting lots of blood, sweat, tears, and into the operation and development of restaurants, he's excited to now be putting his skills to use, continuing to help other restaurant owners and operators thrive and grow as part of the team here at Restaurant 365. He loves great food and great conversation, so he's excited to be here with you all today. Oh yeah, and he was on Top Chef too. Joining him today, I had to throw it in there, Rich, sorry.
Love it.
Joining him today is Derek Tun, who served as the Senior Vice President of Information Technology and Analytics for Black Rock Coffee Bar since January 2021. Prior to joining Black Rock Coffee, he served as President and Chief Executive Officer at Roasters Coffee, a 14-unit chain in Eastern Washington. In addition to his experience in the coffee industry, he's also has restaurant industry experience as a franchisee owner of Jersey Mike's. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and pass the baton off to you, Rich.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for getting to join us, making some time out of your day. I've got my cup of Black Rock ready to roll. So kind of just wanted to cover the agenda for today. First, we'll kind of just, really keep this more of a conversation with Derek and I, talking about, kind of now the new coffee shop landscape, after we've seen some, kind of things shifting in the world around us. We'll talk about cost control in a crowded market, scaling without the chaos. And then, of course, as Denise was mentioning, if you do have any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop those into the Q&A. And then that way we can either circle up with those at the end if we have time remaining, or we can also follow up with folks offline if that makes more sense. So cool. Starting out, Derek, kind of the new coffee shop landscape. We've seen so many folks, kind of that shift now for returning back into the office, kind of seeing how the business has moved around that way a little bit. I know for BlackRock, you guys aren't really in like huge corporate spaces, but have you noticed anything kind of in the differences as far as like more people kind of back on the road, kind of different morning routine, things like that?
Yeah, great question. First off, yeah, really, really great to be here. Thanks for having me on. R365 has been a great partner for us, so always happy to jump in here and chat with you guys. As far as the question, yeah, it's a really good question. And like you said, we don't really have a ton of locations that are in corporate centers. I did some digging just kind of see what our trends were there. And it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what the impact would have been for like some of these return to office mandates that we're hearing about. I'd say just in general, drive-through operation, drive-through coffee, the more people out and about, the more people commuting to work is going to benefit you. And so overall, it's hard to pinpoint, but our traffic has held in very well. So not sure if that's because of return to office or not, but I think we're in a good position for those additional people that are out there commuting to work now when maybe they weren't, 6 months ago or whatnot.
Yeah, I think part of it too is always like even for folks that work from home, it's kind of like I still like that routine of getting to go out and get a cup of coffee from somewhere. Not only gets me out of the house, but also just kind of that interaction, getting to see what people are doing out and about. And of course seeing some people that are headed off to an office, things like that, kind of what's going on in the neighborhood. So still feel like coffee shops are that hub, kind of for the community, for wherever they're at, whether that's in somewhere that's more residential or somewhere that's a little bit more commercial, kind of that mix in between. So I always like kind of asking about those things. The other piece of it is, when we're looking at coffee, just kind of in general, with that, kind of shift for a lot of folks going back to the office, being on the road, we're also just noticing there's a lot more coffee companies that are out there. There's a lot more brands in the coffee space. What have you guys been seeing as far as, I mean, BlackRock's been doing amazing with growth, but what are you seeing as far as competitors coming into the market? How are you seeing that kind of change your day to day?
Yeah, I mean I don't know if there's a more competitive industry right now than coffee. I mean, new competitors are coming into the market all the time, and then of course, the bigger, more established companies who have been here around for a while, they're looking to keep a hold on what they have, and so moving in even more aggressively to certain markets. Um, so I don't think that ever goes away with coffee. I think what we really just try to focus on at BlackRock is, what is our value proposition to our guests? What are they after, and how can we deliver on that? Making sure we have a great quality product. We've got diverse menu offerings, something for everybody. Um, Speed, we're a speed and convenience type operation. That's what most people come to us. We do have lobbies as well, so if you do want to come in and have a little bit more of a, you want to hang out, maybe do some work from the lobby. And then our experience, right, built, delivered through our team members, just making sure that we can execute on that, you know top-notch experience. So yeah, even though there's competition and more coming, we feel confident that we can, hang in there and continue to grow and stand out from the crowd.
Absolutely, and I love it too. There's so many of the groups that I talk to on the R365 side. It's kind of funny. I don't know if I got to mention it to you before. There's a lot of folks that are out there that that look up to you guys. That really kind of ask. They saw that you're using R365, and they're kind of like, well, what else are they doing in their tech stack? I'm like, well, that's not for me to talk about. You can go talk to them, but it's just interesting to really see how folks are kind of trying to look and see what some of the growing brands are doing. I mean, how many locations do you guys have now?
So we're at 160 currently.
That's awesome. So I mean, definitely been seeing some growth, continuing to grow, and I think really just making such a great name for yourselves in the coffee space, where a lot of the kind of burgeoning groups are looking up to you guys as kind of like that big brother in the industry of like, hey, like these are the folks that I want to emulate. This is kind of where I wanted to grow too. So it's awesome to get to see kind of both sides of that from my perspective as well. Shifting a little bit, so kind of looking at pressure with costs, labor, just kind of different systems. Costs themselves. I mean, how have you guys been dealing with whether it's just import shortages? Tariffs are a constant, ever-changing piece that we see, especially with coffee, being imported. Inflation is hitting record high numbers. I mean, how are you guys handling some of those pieces at BlackRock?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, I mean, we just have an amazing supply chain team. Our director of roasting, I would include in that. They're in constant contact with our suppliers, just constant communication, talking about, what are some opportunities we have to, switch things up. Um, and just really make sure that we can stay ahead of things as costs rise. And so far, they've done an amazing job, kind of insulating us from those effects. Um, and then why we're here today, obviously R365, inventory management. We knew we didn't have an inventory management system prior to the end of last year, and so that was one of the reasons we wanted to make this investment, because we knew like there were things that we could just do, fairly low hanging fruit, getting an inventory management system stood up that would help us. And yeah, we've been able to see benefit from that as well, just being more efficient internally with how we operate.
Wait, you guys use Restaurant 365? Is that why we had you? No, I'm kidding. Obviously, we got to talk to each other throughout the whole process while you guys were reviewing our 365. So when it came up that we're going to be talking about coffee and that we were going to have you on, I was raising my hand saying, I've talked to Derek a bunch. Let's have the conversation on the webinar this time. So yeah, I appreciate it. Another piece of the puzzle, not only kind of on the cost side of things, is looking at labor. I worked for some coffee companies in my past. even with some of the places that are around by me walking in, you can definitely tell when you're talking to somebody who really is like seasoned and skilled and knows what they're doing as a barista versus somebody who's brand new and like interested in it, like wanting to learn versus somebody else who's kind of like, you know, they're just here because they needed a job and like, you guys were hiring and they were really excited to, kind of like have a job, but they don't necessarily have like the mental investment in coffee, so to speak. How are you guys managing labor? Kind of what does that look like for you all? I mean, are people banging down the doors, or is it still kind of that constant struggle that we see in the food service space of trying to find and then retain really great staff?
Yeah, no, I mean, our team members, our people are the foundation of the company. And I think, from CEO down, we really focus on that. We can't really do anything unless we have engaged team members. And I think we do a really good job. We monitor industry trends, how are we doing with turnover? And we do a really good job with that. And I think a big part of that is just culture, right? We bring people in, we have a good training program, good onboarding system. And there are always going to be those team members that are here for summer break, or they're in school so they want a part-time job. But we've also found a lot of success and value by really communicating what the career opportunity is here at BlackRock, and that's
Mhm.
allowed us to kind of keep our turnover in check, and just being able to give people like the a realistic look as far as like, hey, if you want to be here and put the time and effort into growing career here, we have a spot for you. And yeah, that kind of reflects in our tenure, our lower turnover, and so we've been really happy with that. Um, yeah, I think we do a good job at it.
Yeah, I mean, low turnover is kind of like, that thing that everybody's always chasing. So when you have a group like yourselves that have, kind of have been able to maintain that lower turnover, it's not only great for the idea of like, you don't have to retrain new people or train tons of new people, kind of new faces rolling through. But I always think kind of the non-measurable side of things, the culture, being able to have people who know the company, who understand the company, have been there for a while, kind of seen your growth. Those are like your brand ambassadors every single day, which they just have like that. I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit more baked in than somebody who's just brand new, who really likes the coffee and likes the brand, versus somebody who's been there for a few years, who really understands it and understands the company's mission and goals and like where they want to be. So I think it's awesome that you guys have been able to maintain a lower turnover. Excuse me. The other piece, you kind of touched on it earlier, is just kind of outdated systems. There's so many operators that are still using, kind of just spreadsheets or disconnected tools. Obviously R365, but how are you guys leveraging technology to really like try to streamline operations, try to avoid any kind of like, operational bottlenecks that are happening on the day to day as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've been living this the last few years, but up leading up to the point of deciding to kind of revamp our whole tech stack, starting with our point of sale, um, and then kind of from getting the right point of sale in place to then adding on these kind of critical systems, and the partnership here with R365, that was a big part of it. That was kind of one of the last pieces we put in place after we went through point of sale revamp. Our prior point of sale had a lot of good qualities to it. One of its weaknesses was it could not easily talk to or integrate with other systems. So we were kind of limited, from a technology standpoint, from a just data gathering standpoint on what we could do there. And so once we made the decision, we went through, the process to get it switched out. We were pretty quickly able to add on some of these other systems that, we were that we had wanted for a very long time. Um, some of the operational impacts, I mean, just better visibility around pretty much everything, sales and labor in real time, having a loyalty program that works for us so we can track our guests, from when they first start coming to us, for their whole life cycle.
Mhm.
Online ordering and app has been big for us. In addition to our marketplace orders. So now, like operationally, those will all come into one system, whereas before they were separate systems. So if you had a DoorDash order come in versus in store, you'd have to run over to another system, a separate ticket would print. And so it created a little bit of a bottleneck there. So once we tightened all that up, we got everything integrated. The additional volume we were getting wasn't really a problem because it was all like in one nice system. It was all just right there for our team members to execute on.
Love that, being able to kind of have that all in one place. And I know it wasn't necessarily something that we had kind of talked about ahead of time, but I think like kind of the POS change process, we all know that that's not an easy one, and it's definitely not a painless change. I mean, I think kind of going into that for you guys at your scale, is there anything you wish you kind of would have done differently, or kind of looking back at that, would you have wanted to maybe make the change earlier when you guys were still a little bit smaller to find better tools, or kind of where did you find yourselves finally hitting that precipice of like, we need to make a change?
Yeah, I think, if you could go back and do it earlier when we were at 5 or 10 locations, obviously that would be easier than when you were into 100+ locations. But I think you also have to kind of just go through the process and kind of the pain of scaling and kind of seeing what your limits are. And I think the thing that really tipped it for us, the scale as far as like, hey, do we switch or not? Was just that we were hitting roadblocks, and we knew at our size we should have certain tools in place for us to get to even the next levels beyond that. And just some issues we were having with something as basic as like credit card readers like not working consistently and just having a more stable system. That was really what caused us to come to the conclusion that we do need to make this investment. We do need to go through it. I think too, just making sure you have a really honest assessment of your internal team, and then be able to bring in vendor partners with the right expertise to help you along the way, because there's a lot of things you can set up on the front end that make it a lot easier along the way. Without going into too many of the details, having flashbacks now, some of these conversations, but just making sure everything's laid out on the table and making sure that all the functional areas kind of understand how the whole system is going to work together. Because you're never going to be able to give every department 100% of what they want. So just making sure you really prioritize what you're trying to get out of doing a point of sale switch.
Absolutely. I wanted to specifically touch on that just because I know there's been, so many groups that we talk to of all different sizes that are looking at changing point of sale, and they have kind of some of those other limitations that you mentioned. And, it really is one of those things. There's no like ideal time to change, but I think kind of what you were saying there is, as far as when you realize that you're hitting more roadblocks that are limiting your business growth, being able then to recognize, hey, we know that we have this issue. What are the changes that we want to see? Like, where do we want to be? And then kind of getting all the stakeholders together, right? Like, where do we want to go, and how do we get from point A to point B? You're not going to make everybody happy, but you can definitely try to take everybody's input and try to get you a little bit closer along the way. So I appreciate that. Wasn't really one that we had kind of on the agenda, but wanted to be able to throw it in while I had you on. Cost control in a crowded market. So I mean, in this regard, there it goes. Kind of the controlling your controllables, right? My team always loves saying that whenever we're talking to folks, managing your costs, managing labor, figuring out the best practices for you and your business. On the food cost side of things, we've seen prices changing all over. Again, with the imports, with tariffs, with taxes, whether that's the coffee beans themselves, which you're saying your team's been doing a great job of staying on top of that, but even some of the other stuff, milk alternatives, syrups, kind of all those paper goods, things like that are not necessarily domestic but being brought in as well. What are some of the additional things that you're aware of that your team is trying to do for managing those costs?
Yeah, I think for us, especially where we're at kind of in our growth cycle, just standardizing we operate in 7 different states, 160 locations, and there's just a lot of opportunity to make sure that the whole system is as standard as can be. Because the more you
Mhm.
standardize, you can get economies of scale. You can kind of look at things a little differently and start to kind of leverage your size a little bit more. So I think that's kind of the main thing for us at the moment, is just making sure that um, yeah, we're doing things consistently across the board, and that helps us manage our overall um, cost of goods. Um, I kind of dive in a little more to like food, for example. Like we'll have different, we have different food vendors in different markets, and just making sure that we are offering a similar menu, that we're negotiating with our vendors, and then also kind of like looking at what that food program overall will look like as we continue to grow. And I think, just having those kind of realistic conversations internally and with our vendors has helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think perhaps some tools out in the wild that that help you kind of be able to report on those numbers and be able to see things. I don't know where we would get that kind of an idea, but just that type of stuff. Um, on the labor side of it, when we're thinking about kind of controlling your labor costs, 89% of the state of the restaurant industry respondents noted that they've been seeing rising labor costs. It's that thing that will never go away. We're always going to have annual raises. We're going to have kind of inflationary raises. Kind of how do we take care of our team so that we can keep the right people. Um, what are some of the things that you guys have been doing as far as leaning into smarter solutions, technology, things to help make an impact on the labor front with BlackRock?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes back to the decision to revamp our tech stack, because we knew there was opportunity there to get more of a real time and predictive views into our operators' hands, into our team members' hands. So just being able to look at things like sales trends, sales patterns, when are my peaks. The nice thing about the coffee industry, the coffee business is very predictable. Like most people want caffeine and coffee in the morning. So we can, we know a good chunk of our sales are going to come before noon. Every location is a little different, every market's a little different, but for the most part, it follows a very similar trend. And just um, being able to present that data and have it in the hands of our team members who are making schedules, and just allowing them to see like, hey, here's what you've done on this day of the week, the last couple weeks. They've gotten really good at creating schedules that can kind of scale up and down based on the demand of the day. That and having the real time views of sales and labor as well allows them to make those kind of fine tune adjustments as needed. And so just having an integrated system where sales data, labor data is all kind of flowing into one spot, real time, has been a big win for us overall. Um, and of course, focusing on keeping turnover low, keeping our team members, happy. That helps as well. Like you mentioned, keeping training costs low. That's been a big part of this as well.
Yeah, kind of tied into that. I mean, was there any kind of specific like aha moment where you kind of realized some of these tools, integrations, automations, kind of just technology could help free up managers so then that way they're able to focus more on growth and the team and the business rather than like admin and paperwork? Like, was there anything specific that stood out for you guys in this process?
I mean, if you go back a few years, when we weren't as sophisticated with some of our technology, that was definitely a pain point for us, just getting reporting out, help, and those having reports that would help drive scheduling. And so we knew pretty quickly that if we could get better reporting, better data, better visibility into the hands of our leadership teams in store, and specifically the folks that are writing the schedules, that we'd be able to see some pretty big gains in labor, and that's proven to be true. But I wouldn't say there's like one specific moment that stands out. It was just kind of a process of growing and kind of being in different markets, different wage rates. just trying to keep one of our prime costs in check. That it was kind of a natural progression from that.
Awesome. And then would you say, I mean, is there, for the folks who are on, kind of other folks in the coffee space as well, is there any particular lesson or something that you think that they should think about, when they're thinking about their own growth and scaling and kind of managing costs? Anything that you think that they could benefit from learning from, kind of somebody like you who's helped the company grow to the point that you guys are already at?
Yeah, I think turning on a tool is, in some ways that's one of the easiest parts of it, but really teaching the teams on how to use it and why it's important. And so putting that investment in to the teams on the front end as far as like, hey, we're rolling this out. Here's why. Here's how it's going to help the company. And in turn, here's how it's going to help you, whether that's through, incentive compensation, bonuses, more, better career path, right? Just
Mhm.
making sure that the teams really understand why. Because otherwise, if you just turn on a tool and say, here you go, it's probably not going to go the way you want. And you're going to kind of be scratching your head on, oh man, we paid all this money and rolled out this system, but nobody's using it. So you really need to focus in on the implementation and the teaching um, on the why.
Yeah, I had a manager when I was first kind of starting my career, actually, when I was in coffee. Um, it's all about the with them, what's in it for me, really kind of helping people understand the why behind what you're doing. And when you're rolling out, kind of a new tool, it's like, well, how do you get that adoption? I think that's something we hear from a lot of folks is, well, my team's not really open to these new tools. And it's like, well, if you change the recipe for, how you make a specific drink, are they still allowed to make it their way, or you want them to follow, your methods? Maybe there's a reason behind it. We were getting feedback on how a drink tasted, and we wanted to tweak it, things like that. So kind of, how it takes it back to them, for both on the personal side and then also how that's going to impact the guest as well. It can always be like some really powerful stuff. For you guys, I mean, you all have been growing like crazy. Really looking at scaling and growth with, I'm sure even more locations that are on the horizon. Um, One of the things that we talked about in the beginning, and you even mentioned it before, is those disconnected systems and how it just ends up creating an issue, like you mentioned with the POS, kind of limited data, wasn't connected to other things. The third party, kind of partner marketplace platforms where I've seen enough of those, someone's running around to different tablets and managing different orders and things like that, versus having them all connected. Obviously, you have a different perspective than a day-to-day, kind of operator. But what are some of the things that you saw for efficiency by having a integrated systems, whether that be the POS, the inventory, schedules, all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, one of the main things was just being able to know what your total sales were, right, in one spot. And then from those sales, like what's your product mix? What types of things are you selling? Um, before we kind of revamped our tech stack, got everything integrated, you'd have to go to separate systems and kind of do math and combine the two. And maybe the menus weren't structured the same way, so you were kind of you were doing a lot of manual work just to get the whole picture of what your business was actually doing. And so
Mhm.
I think that's probably one of the biggest things right there is just having a single structured menu that pushes out to all of our ordering channels and then brings that data back into one picture. That was one of the biggest things for us.
Awesome. Yeah, being able to kind of connect the dots, so to speak, right? From the POS, hooking that up to, accounting, connecting that to inventory, looking at labor, the forecasting that you mentioned before, kind of how all of those pieces come together. They're all part of the business. But for so many folks, like you said, it's they're doing this over here, then this over here, and then they look at a report and they wonder why the numbers don't match. But if there's so many different variables in place where things don't line up, that's where you can see those kind of data discrepancies. You had mentioned too earlier about kind of just being able to get better insights and kind of the timeliness of it, being able to see things in real time. What are some of the things that either you are looking at or like, kind of even your folks in the field, whether that's in one location or somebody's managing multiple locations, what are some of the insights that they have better visibility on now compared to what you guys were doing before?
Yeah, I think here I would, obviously I talked about labor and sales already. That was big, but to kind of focus a little more on inventory management, um, or actual versus theoretical reporting, that's been huge for us. We're still teaching our teams like what exactly that all means and how you can take action on that. But I think that's been a big revelation for us as a company, just in terms of teaching everybody how do you interpret an actual versus theoretical report? What does it mean? And then all of the components that go into that, from your recipe builds to how, invoices are being mapped, and like specific ingredients from our vendors. It really covers a lot of our business, and just that report alone just has been very, very eye-opening and beneficial for all the teams, so they really understand their business a lot better, and what's driving some of their cost of goods.
I think kind of tied into that type of reporting as well is, kind of looking at consistency, right? Like we have multiple locations. When I was running kitchens, it's like if I saw that my costs were out of line, or there was a bigger variance on certain ingredients from one location to another, even though they're doing the same volume, similar product mix, kind of being able then to drill into it of like, well, where is this variance coming from? And a lot of that I think came from consistency. How do you drive that, especially as you grow across multiple states? Managing recipes, making sure the team understands, any changes that come out, what the changes are, making sure that they understand, the why behind it, and rolling them out. What are some of the things that you guys are doing to ensure that, somebody in Arizona is getting the same, oat milk latte as somebody up in Oregon? What are some of the tools that you guys have been putting in place for really managing that consistency, not only on the purchasing, but also just operationally?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that's kind of been brought to the surface, as far as just how different regions um, might do things a little bit differently. And so we know that that's an opportunity for like our L&D team to kind of come in and put, a little more refined processes in place. There are some cases where we actually do use a different ingredient because of like supply chain. I don't even want to call it a constraint. It's just, us starting the company in the Pacific Northwest, we had certain things available to us that may not be available in Texas. And so
Mhm.
just understanding what those differences are, and again, as we grow and continue to scale, it's going to force us to standardize over time. And I think we've done a really good job with that, and just kind of being realistic about, what some of the differences are. And yeah, we know somebody who is from Portland who enjoys Black Rock, and maybe they fly down to Phoenix, and goes to a Black Rock. We want them to have the same experience, the same product that made them one of our loyal guests to begin with. So inventory management, R365 has been big on that, because we can really like see like differences on how things are being prepared, and kind of work through those to see if that's an opportunity to standardize, or is that something we just kind of leave as is for the moment. But just having the visibility that allows us to at least have the conversation.
Love that. And then kind of the last bullet point that's on here is kind of that scalability, right, behind technology. We're restaurant specific tools, we're food service specific, we're built to grow with you. But for a lot of people, changing their tech stack is really scary. There's so many moving parts to it, like you're saying before. You don't know what you don't know, or you don't know what you need until you realize it's kind of a deficit now. For folks who are hesitant to modernize, what do you see as like a potential cost of sticking with those outdated, disconnected manual type tools? What were some of the things maybe that you guys saw at BlackRock before you kind of, switched to some of the current tool stack that you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're behind now in technology, it doesn't get better, it just gets harder. And so in a lot of ways, us switching everything out was, from a technology standpoint, was just we knew we had to at least get to par with where technology is because things are coming that we're not even thinking of, um, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road that if you're not in position with your technology, you don't have a point of sale that could easily talk to other systems that come along, you're gonna be in a really challenging position. So if you are already behind now, it'll probably get worse. And for me, looking back, just having a stable system, having credit card readers that can take consistent payment, just that alone was probably worth the pain of switching, was just knowing that you have your uptime. And it sounds very simple, but what one thing we kind of discovered was different locations, we didn't really know they were having necessarily um as many hiccups as they were until we started switching things out. We were like, wow, this we're collecting more transactions now because we have just more stable credit card readers. So I wouldn't I wouldn't overthink necessarily. If you know you're behind on your tech stack, it's like I would highly encourage you to, if you're looking, to go ahead and pull the trigger. Even though it's painful, you're likely to see some good returns on that just from, I would call it blocking and tackling, just being able to collect payment and ring up an order. And then everything else
Mhm.
up beyond that, bringing on new integrated systems, digital, all that, that'd be an additional benefit.
Awesome. That kind of leads, right into my next question, almost kind of overlaps a little bit. A lot of smaller groups that we talk to, they have the tools in place or lack of tools in place because they feel like if they lean too much into technology, they're going to be losing kind of the spirit of who they are. What advice could you give to somebody, an operator, an owner, somebody who's just starting to think about like laying the tech foundation, right? Like we know that technology can make things easier, but people think they're going to give up who they are. What's some advice you think as far as like just first steps, getting started, things like that?
Yeah, I would, and I could relate to that idea as far as not wanting to change too much. But the reality is, I guess it's like technology is just getting more and more ingrained with our everyday lives, restaurant, but food and beverage in general. I think we're playing catch up a little bit as an industry, but things are coming on pretty quick. And I would just say that that's just kind of where the world is headed. And if you're out of position and you're not making just some very basic investments in technology, it could be tough for you, especially as other brands do adopt those and provide, tools and experiences that guests are looking for. So I wouldn't shy away from it, certainly. And in a lot of ways, the longer you put off making just some basic investments in your technology, the further behind you're going to fall, and it's pretty big risk, from my standpoint, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, as technology ramps up, it doesn't just kind of go, linear. It swoops up really fast. So, like you said, it doesn't get any easier if you wait. It's better to kind of bite the bullet and just get started. And obviously, at R365, we have some of those integrated tools, being able to look at, how we can pull in data from the point of sale system, integrating in with vendors on the accounting side, being able to integrate in with banks, kind of bringing that all into one place so that you can see everything from all angles of your business under one roof. And some of the things you mentioned before too, as far as just like driving costs and really managing profitability inside of here. So being able to see, kind of those different aspects that happen as far as looking at my inventory across different locations or driving that consistency, across multiple states because we've got the same recipes going in and we can review that actual versus theoretical and really be able to have the data to back up, what we're looking at and the decisions that we're making as a company. Um, cool. Q&A. So Denise, if you are around, did we happen to, I haven't had a chance to keep an eye on any questions that might have come in. Was there anything that you have been able to see pop on that we can chat about?
Yeah, I have a few questions here. So first one is, how can operators balance rising demand for specialty items without letting costs spiral? Are there any top best practices?
That's a great question. I think being a coffee beverage brand, we run a lot of LTOs, seasonal type drinks. So I think just making sure you really evaluate like what are you trying to accomplish with this specialty offering? If it's just getting guests excited because you have, something new to offer, um, versus the pain, some of the pain that you might experience from bringing in a new item. I think just kind of being aligned on what you're actually trying to accomplish there. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then this was probably for you too, Derek. If you could give one do this, not that piece of advice to a coffee shop leader right now, what would it be?
Uh, do this, not that. Um, I'd say if you're got kind of a legacy point of sale that's outdated and you feel like you're behind in technology and you're not offering, some basic functionalities, then d don't delay anymore. Just bite the bullet. You'll probably be a lot happier once you're you know through. If the decision is to transition, then just move forward and do it, and it'll be worth it on the back end.
Okay. And this one looks like it could be for both of you. So why do older systems struggle to keep up with new demands, and what should operators look for in modern solutions?
I think on my side of it, it's older systems, just they weren't built with the most current technology, the most current capabilities. We see it a lot with kind of legacy point of sale systems. Uh, they don't connect to anything, and trying to get data out of them isn't easy, and the reporting may not be great. So trying to find some ways for, kind of getting folks the information that they want to see now that lives inside of their POS. I think that carries over to kind of all different aspects of technology, right? Like we want to have whatever the latest and greatest and newest is because we know that that's going to be like the best, most current technology, and that's going to be something that can really continue to grow and scale. Versus, think about like the cash register back in the day versus a POS now. Cash register only gave you so much visibility versus being able to, really see reporting across multiple locations that you can have now, and that's just a technology gain that we just didn't have when before some of these integrated and cloud-based point of sale systems. So I think kind of that being able to have a tool that's going to grow with you and scale with you as well.
Okay, and then we just had one question come in right now that is asking if you can dive a bit deeper into actual versus theoretical.
Cool.
Great.
You want to talk about it, Derek? You want me to take it?
Let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I like to think of actual versus theoretical as it's what did I truly use, my actual, and that's going to be based off of my inventory counts, my purchases, any transfers, things like that. So like how much physical product did I truly use from when I started the month, what did I buy and add to my inventory this month? And then at the end of the month, when I count inventory, how much do I have left? So how much did I use from beginning to now? That gets compared against your theoretical, and that's where we take point of sale data and we combine that with recipes. Easiest version of it is, thinking about like an energy drink, right? Or a bottle of water. If I buy, 24 bottles of water, I start the month with 24 bottles of water, and I add another 24 in at the end of the month when I count my inventory. If I only have 10 bottles of water left, that means I actually used 38, right? 24 plus 24 is 48, minus the 10 that I counted at the end of the month is 38 that I actually used. But if I look at my theoretical and I look at the point of sale data combined with, recipe tracking, how we deplete those items, then it could be, maybe I only should have used 28. So where did that other 10 go? And that's that variance that we can help, kind of find or shed a little bit of light on. It helps typically for isolating issues with waste that's not being tracked, errors in counting inventory, portioning mistakes, or sometimes it's just theft or somebody giving something away and not tracking it in a point of sale system or tracking it on a record somewhere. So being able to review actuals versus theoreticals can really help shed a lot of light on some of those pieces, help make sure that you can make better decisions about the business, and kind of, it's not just that your costs may be high. It's that specifically inside of my food cost, if I'm looking at my syrups and I'm noticing that my mocha syrup, we're going through way more of that. Well, maybe somebody's using the wrong size pump, or they're putting in too many pumps of syrup into a recipe. So it just helps kind of shed a little bit more light on some of those pieces, and that altogether falls underneath the actual versus theoretical umbrella.
Perfect. All right, I think that is actually it for the questions. But I do have a poll for our attendees right now, so I'll go ahead and launch that. So would you like a demo to see how R365 can help your coffee shop cut costs and scale? So we'll leave this up for just a little bit. Okay, we're seeing some more answers run through. Perfect. So just a couple more seconds here. All right, we'll go ahead and end that. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Rich and Derek, for sharing your time and insights with us today. Rich, if you could advance towards, yep, perfect. For those interested in hearing more from industry leaders like the ones you heard from today, I wanted to highlight our restaurant transformation tour. Our next stop is in San Diego, where we'll be hosting an event filled with sessions tailored to a variety of roles across the restaurant industry. It's a really great opportunity to connect, learn, and share ideas with fellow professionals in the industry. In fact, Derek's colleague, Heather Kluzak from Black Rock Coffee, will be one of our featured speakers in San Diego. So there'll be plenty of coffee knowledge brewing there. If you can't make it to San Diego, no worries. Our final stop will be in New York later this year. So just go ahead and scan that QR code on the screen for more details, and we'd love to see you there.
Come hang out with me in San Diego.
Yeah, Rich will be there too. This concludes our webinar. You'll receive an email with a link to download a recording of the webinar to listen to again or share with your colleagues within the next few days. Thank you again for joining, and we hope to see you all soon.